I'll never forget the sound of my daughter's voice that day. It was soft, emotional, even a little shaky, but every word hit me like a freight train. Thank you for stepping up when my real dad couldn't. And the way she hugged him, right there at the altar, like I hadn't just drained my savings to give her the wedding of her dreams, like I hadn't been the one who stayed. That was the moment I stopped being the doting father. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. But to explain how it got to that point, I need to go back a bit. Back before the $40,000 venue, before the seating chart drama, before she stopped calling me dad. My name's Ryan. I'm 52 years old, and for most of my adult life, I thought I was doing everything right. I'm not perfect. No one is. But I've always prided myself on being there for my daughter, Emily. Her mother, Karen, yes, that's actually her name, and I divorced when Emily was just 7. It wasn't a messy split, at least not at first. Karen and I had drifted apart over the years, and we agreed to split custody right down the middle. I took every other week, always picked Emily up on time, packed her lunches, helped with homework, even sat through those awkward middle school band recitals with a smile on my face. I did what dads are supposed to do. I showed up. Things started to shift around the time Karen started dating her now husband, Greg. He came into the picture when Emily was around 12. At first, he seemed all right, clean-cut, charming, always polite. But there was something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't anything specific, just a kind of smugness, like he was always sizing me up. The way he talked about parenting, casually throwing out phrases like providing structure and offering guidance, like I wasn't already doing that. Like I was just the weekend babysitter. Still, I didn't want to cause any trouble for Emily's sake. If he made Karen happy and treated Emily well, then fine. I bit my tongue. I even shook the man's hand at Emily's high school graduation. That's the kind of dad I am. Emily and I were always close when she was younger. She used to write me Father's Day cards with little stick figure drawings of the two of us. She called me her superhero once, said I was stronger than Iron Man and smarter than Batman. I kept that card in my wallet for years until it finally started falling apart. Somewhere between her teenage years and college, though, something shifted. I know that's normal. Kids grow up and pull away, but with Emily, it felt different. Like she wasn't just growing up, she was growing away from me. The real wedge, I think, was money. Greg is well off. He owns a few car dealerships and drives around in a Mercedes SUV like he's allergic to economy sedans. Karen and Greg moved into a much bigger house when Emily was in high school, complete with a pool and a home theater. And suddenly, my modest 3-bedroom rental with the beat-up grill in the backyard wasn't good enough. Emily never said it outright, but the way she talked about their place, like it was some kind of palace, stung a bit. I tried not to let it show. By the time she got to college, she was spending less and less time with me. Holidays were always complicated, and when she did visit, she was distracted, glued to her phone, making plans with her mom's side of the family. I was still footing part of her tuition, about $12,000 a year, plus books and groceries, and yet somehow, I was becoming the background character in my own daughter's life. Still, I held on to the hope that things would even out. That maybe after graduation, she'd come around. That we'd get back to the way things were. When she called me to tell me she was engaged, I was over the moon. I told her how proud I was of her, how much I couldn't wait to meet her fiancé, how I'd do anything I could to help with the wedding. She hesitated a moment and then asked, "Do you think you could contribute to the budget?" Mom and Greg already offered. Of course I said yes. I offered $40,000 right then and there. It wasn't money I had lying around, not exactly. I'd been saving for a few home improvements, maybe even an early retirement, but I figured, this is my daughter's wedding. A once-in-a-lifetime thing. She deserves the best. What I didn't realize at the time was that helping with the wedding was code for pay for everything while having zero say. I wasn't invited to the venue tours. I wasn't consulted about the guest list. I didn't get a +1, even though I'd been dating a lovely woman named Claire for almost 2 years. Every suggestion I made was brushed off. When I asked if we could include a father-daughter dance, she laughed and said, "Let's see if there's time for that." At first, I thought maybe it was just stress. Weddings bring out the worst in people, right? Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she was trying to keep things even between her two families. But as the months passed, it became increasingly clear I was just the wallet. Meanwhile, Greg was being treated like the actual father of the bride. He was included in the dress-fitting photos. He gave a speech at the rehearsal dinner. He even walked her down the aisle halfway. Emily's idea of being modern, she said. I was supposed to meet her fiancé, Tyler, for coffee months before the wedding. We set the date twice. He no-showed both times. The third time, he texted me 20 minutes before to say, something came up. That something turned out to be a golf trip with Greg. When I asked Emily about it, she said, Tyler just really connects with Greg. He sees him as a mentor. She didn't seem to realize how much that stung. There was a moment about 2 weeks before the wedding when I finally tried to address it. I sat Emily down and told her I felt pushed out, like I wasn't part of the process. I told her I didn't expect to be the center of attention, but I at least wanted to feel like I mattered. She didn't even look up from her phone. Dad, she said, you're overthinking it. This is my day. Not everything has to be about you. I stared at her for a moment, searching for the little girl who once made me macaroni necklaces and begged to ride on my shoulders at the zoo. But she was gone, replaced by this cold, dismissive stranger who acted like I was an inconvenience. I went home that night and stared at the check I'd written for the venue deposit. I thought about canceling it. I really did. But then I thought, no, maybe the wedding itself would be different. Maybe in the moment, when she saw me standing there in the front row, something would shift. Maybe she'd remember who I was, what I'd done for her, what we'd been through. I clung to that hope like a fool. And then came the wedding day. That morning, no one told me where to go. I had to track down a coordinator just to find out where to sit. I wasn't part of any photos. When I finally saw Emily before the ceremony, she gave me a quick side hug and said, glad you made it. Like I was some distant uncle. Then, during the ceremony, as the music started and she walked down the aisle, she paused halfway and turned to Greg. She hugged him tightly. Everyone clapped. And then, with a mic clipped to her dress, she said the words that still echo in my head. Thank you for stepping up when my real dad couldn't. The crowd laughed. Some people clapped. Karen wiped a tear. And I just sat there, frozen. Then something inside me snapped. I stood up. And that's where everything changed. I didn't storm out. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there for a moment, staring at my daughter, my own flesh and blood, while the sound of her voice replayed over and over in my head like some cruel loop I couldn't shut off. When my real dad couldn't. It felt like the oxygen got sucked out of the room. Not a single person turned to look at me, not even Karen. They were all too busy smiling at Greg, who looked like he'd just been handed the keys to the kingdom. Chest puffed out. That smug little half nod he gave the audience, like he was the star of the show. I sat back down slowly, my knees stiff, my mind moving 1,000 miles an hour. Everything after that was a blur. I heard the officiant mumbling something about vows and love and unity, but I wasn't really there. I was in every memory, every scraped knee I cleaned, every math test I stayed up late to help her study for, every birthday party I planned, every rainy night I drove across town because she forgot her textbook at her mom's. I was in every school auditorium and parent-teacher meeting and doctor's appointment. I was there when she got her first period and didn't want to tell her mom. I was the one who ran out to the pharmacy at midnight and gave her the most awkward, loving, dad-level pep talk of my life. But none of that mattered. Not anymore. After the ceremony, there was a cocktail hour. Everyone was mingling, laughing, taking photos by the flower arch. I stood off to the side, watching. Claire, my girlfriend, had offered to come, but I told her not to. It's Emily's big day, I said. I don't want to make anything uncomfortable. Now I wished more than anything that she had come. I needed someone in my corner. Someone who saw what I saw. I caught Emily near the bar, posing for a photo with Greg and her bridesmaids. She looked radiant, I'll admit that. Beautiful in her gown, glowing with that just-married energy. But when she looked in Greg's direction, it wasn't just admiration, it was worship. Like he could do no wrong. When the photographer turned away, I walked up to her. Quietly, calmly. Emily, I said, can we talk? She didn't look thrilled. Dad, now? We're about to cut the cake. It'll just take a second. She sighed and followed me a few steps away, behind one of the tent pillars. Still in view, but out of earshot. I took a deep breath. That line during the ceremony. About your real dad. Was that really necessary? Her expression flattened. Oh my God, are you seriously making this about you right now? I blinked. I'm not making it about me. I'm trying to understand why you would say that. After everything I've done, after paying for this entire wedding, You publicly thanked Greg and said I couldn't step up? She rolled her eyes. It was a moment, Dad. Greg has been there for me in ways you never could. What does that even mean? I asked, my voice lower now. I've been there your entire life. She crossed her arms. You've been present, sure. But Greg helped me get into grad school. He introduced me to Tyler's company. He mentors me. You're good for birthday cards and checks, Dad. That's all. I took a half step back like I'd been slapped. My jaw clenched, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. She kept going. And honestly, I didn't want to say this today, but since you're bringing it up, if paying for the wedding was your way of buying relevance, that's not how it works. You offered. No one asked you to. I stood there stunned. My tongue felt heavy in my mouth. I wanted to say so many things, to scream that she was wrong, to remind her of all the ways I'd gone above and beyond, but the words didn't come. And part of me knew she wouldn't hear them anyway. Finally, I managed to ask, do you even see me as your father anymore? She looked at me, really looked at me, for a half second. Then, flatly, I see you as someone who helped raise me. But Greg is the one I look up to now. And just like that, something cracked inside me. Not in an explosive way. It was more like a quiet snap, the kind you barely notice until you realize something doesn't fit the same way anymore. I nodded once and turned to leave. Wait, she called out, almost as an afterthought. We're doing family speeches after the cake. I wrote one for you to read. It's short, 2 minutes, tops. I didn't respond. I just walked away. When I got to the parking lot, I sat in my car for 10 minutes straight, staring at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. Not with rage, just disbelief. Sadness. The kind that sits low in your gut and makes your ribs feel hollow. I scrolled through my phone, through old photos of Emily. Age 4 at the beach, covered in sand and chocolate ice cream. Age 9, holding up her science fair trophy. Age 16, standing next to me at her junior prom, grinning in that navy blue dress we'd picked out together. She used to look at me like I hung the moon. When did that change? When did I become disposable? I almost drove home right then. Almost. But something held me back. Call it pride. Call it spite. Call it whatever you want. I walked back in through the side gate, nodded to a few people, and stood in the shadows near the catering table as they wheeled out the 5-tier cake. I watched her and Tyler feed each other messy slices, laughing as frosting got on her nose. I saw Karen dabbing her eyes and Greg with his arm around her waist like he'd been there from day one. And then it was time for the speeches. The MC got on the mic. We have a few special people lined up to say a few words to the happy couple. Karen went first. She kept it brief, something about watching Emily grow into a strong, independent woman. Then Greg spoke. His speech was longer. He called Emily his shining light and told a story about teaching her to parallel park. The crowd laughed. He ended with, "It's been the honor of my life to be your dad in all the ways that matter." More clapping. Some sniffles. Then the MC said, "And now, Emily's father, Ryan, has a few words." I didn't move. The crowd turned. Some people started whispering. Emily looked confused, then annoyed. She stepped toward the mic herself. "He had a speech," she said, laughing awkwardly. "Maybe he's in the bathroom." That's when I stepped forward, but not toward the mic. I walked right past the dance floor, right past the stage, right up to Emily. "I won't be giving a speech," I said quietly. "But thanks for letting me know where we stand." She blinked, thrown off. "What are you talking about?" I handed her a small envelope. "That's the final payment I was supposed to send the venue next week. You might want to take care of that yourself." Her eyes widened. "Wait, Dad, what?" I didn't answer. I turned and walked straight out the door. I didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd become an afterthought in my own daughter's story. I thought about all the signs I'd ignored, all the little slights, the missed thank yous, the favoring of Greg, the slow erasure of my role in her life. I'd chalked it all up to wedding stress, to growing up, to modern family dynamics. But the truth was much simpler. She didn't respect me anymore. Maybe she hadn't in a long time. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls and a few text messages from Emily. "Emily, Dad, we need to talk. Please don't do anything dramatic." "Emily, that envelope was empty. What's going on?" "Emily, I don't understand. Why are you being like this?" No apology. No regret. Just confusion that the human ATM had suddenly stopped dispensing. Then came a text from Karen. "Karen, Ryan, What the hell are you trying to prove? You're embarrassing yourself. And one from Greg. Greg, let's be adults here. You're better than this. I stared at that last one for a long time. Adults. Like he was the authority now. Like I was the bitter ex clinging to the spotlight. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I called my financial advisor. Hi, Scott, I said. Quick question. What would it take to pull back the rest of that $40,000 gift before it finalizes on the contract? Scott paused. Well, depending on the vendor timelines. Why? What happened? I took a breath. Just tell me what's possible. Because suddenly, I had an idea. One that wasn't dramatic. One that wasn't petty. It was precise. And I knew exactly where to start. It's funny how fast people show you who they are when you stop giving them what they want. The moment I pulled that final payment and left the wedding early, I went from beloved father to unstable troublemaker in record time. The narrative flipped overnight, and I didn't even get a heads up. Suddenly, I was the one ruining her special day. The villain. The ungrateful parent who couldn't handle not being the center of attention. That's what Emily told people anyway. She didn't call me again. Not once. At first, it hurt like hell. The first week after the wedding was the worst. I kept checking my phone like a fool, half hoping she'd call just to scream at me. Anything to show she still cared. I was angry, but more than that, I was grieving. Not just the moment at the altar. Not just the line she said in front of everyone. I was mourning the entire relationship. The bond one thought we had. The years I spent building something I assumed was unbreakable. Turns out, I was the only one holding on. I didn't tell Claire everything at first. I just said, the wedding didn't go well. But she knew me too well to leave it at that. She came over the next night with takeout and a bottle of wine, and I finally broke down. Really broke down. I told her everything. About the speech, the snub, the cold conversations, the real dad comment. I even read her the texts Emily sent me afterward, trying to guilt me into sending the rest of the money. Claire didn't say much. She just sat with me, her hand on my back, quiet while I let it all out. Finally, she said, you did everything you could, Ryan. You were a good father. You still are. That made me cry harder. I needed that reminder. I really did. Because for a while, I started questioning everything. Was I too passive? Too accommodating? Did I make it too easy for Karen and Greg to step in and rewrite my role? I started digging through old emails, old receipts. Not out of bitterness. Well, maybe a little, but more out of this need to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it. That I had shown up. That I had paid for summer camps, school trips, braces, therapy when she was 13 and spiraling. I even found the paperwork from when I took out a loan to help cover the down payment on her first apartment after college. Greg hadn't been around for any of that. I didn't send any of it to her, of course. What would have been the point? She wasn't listening. Not anymore. So I stopped trying. I deleted the wedding photos off my phone. I muted Emily's social media accounts. I archived every folder with her name in my email inbox. I even boxed up the scrapbooks I made of her childhood, pictures, drawings, birthday cards, all of it, and stored them in the attic. I wasn't throwing them out. I just couldn't look at them for a while. It felt like I'd been walking around with this open wound, and everyone around me was pretending not to notice. Even some of my friends, well-meaning guys from work, mostly, kept saying things like, she'll come around, or daughters go through phases. But it didn't feel like a phase. It felt like a severance. And the worst part? No one really asks how fathers feel when this kind of thing happens. If a mom got publicly humiliated at her daughter's wedding, people would rally around her. But a dad? You're expected to suck it up. Be stoic. Move on. Write another check. But I couldn't move on. Not yet. I took some time off work. Just a few days. I told my assistant I had family matters to deal with, and she didn't ask questions. I work in real estate. I run a mid-sized brokerage in town, and thankfully, I've got a solid team under me. I'd spent years building it up from nothing. Back when Emily was little, I'd work insane hours just to keep us afloat, sometimes sleeping in my car between showings because I couldn't afford gas to drive home and back. But I made it work. And eventually, the business took off. Funny thing is, I never stopped working for her. Every milestone, hiring my first employee, opening a second office, hitting 7 figures, I'd immediately think, now I can finally afford to send Emily to that private school, or this means I can cover her master's program without loans. She was always my benchmark for success. Every move I made with her in mind. But now, for the first time in years, I had to ask myself, what does success look like if she's not part of the picture? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Claire was patient. She didn't rush me, didn't press me to get over it. She just existed beside me. That's what I needed. Someone who didn't try to fix it, just let me feel what I needed to feel. One night, about 3 weeks after the wedding, we were sitting on my porch, sipping coffee. The air was cool, and the sun was just setting behind the hills. I hadn't said much that evening, but out of nowhere, Claire asked, if you weren't Emily's dad, if you were just Ryan, the man, what would you want your life to look like? The question hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd never really thought about that. Just Ryan. Not dad. Not Karen's ex. Not the one who funds everyone's lifestyle. Just me. I don't know, I admitted. I've been a dad so long, I kind of forgot what else there is. Claire smiled softly. Then maybe it's time to remember. That night, after she left, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh journal. Just a blank notebook I hadn't used in years. And I wrote, in big block letters across the first page, what do I want? It felt stupid at first, like a teenager writing in a diary. But then I started writing. And writing. No filters. No shame. Just thoughts. Goals. Regrets. Dreams I'd buried. Things I missed doing. Places I wanted to go. People I'd lost touch with. Things I wanted to build that had nothing to do with parenting. Over the next few weeks, that journal became my anchor. I started running again. Just a mile or two each morning, nothing crazy. But it cleared my head. I dusted off my old guitar, the one I hadn't touched since Emily was in middle school. I even took a woodworking class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. And I reconnected with my brother, James. We hadn't spoken much since Mom died, but he reached out after hearing about what happened at the wedding. Heard through the grapevine, he said. Thought you might want to talk. I drove up to his place that weekend, and we sat in his garage with beers, talking until 2 a.m. He said something that stuck with me. You gave her a runway, Ryan. But the flight plan she filed? That's on her. Not you. That was the first time I felt something shift. Just a little. Like maybe I didn't have to carry the whole weight forever. Meanwhile, things at the brokerage started picking up again. One of our agents closed a record deal on a lakefront property, and I decided to reward the whole team with a weekend retreat. Rented out a cozy resort up north, all expenses paid. The younger agents were shocked. One of them said, "Dang, Mr. Reynolds, you're on a whole new vibe lately." And maybe I was. I started mentoring a few of the new hires myself, something I hadn't done in years. And for the first time, I realized how much I enjoyed it. Watching people grow, guiding them, not out of obligation, but because it felt meaningful. Claire noticed the change, too. You're standing straighter, she told me one night. Smiling more. I hadn't even realized it. Around that same time, I got a call from an old friend, Tom, a guy I used to play poker with every month before life got too busy. He was organizing a charity auction for a local shelter and asked if I'd be willing to donate a weekend stay at one of my rental properties. I agreed without hesitation and even offered to match the winning bid. That auction ended up raising more than $50,000, and the local paper did a little write-up about it. They quoted me as saying, "Sometimes life gives you a second chance to do something that matters. Take it." When I read that quote back, I realized I meant it. And still, through all of this rebuilding, the grief lingered. It wasn't always loud, but it was there, like a shadow that followed me in quiet moments. Sometimes I'd see a dad and daughter laughing in the park, and it would hit me all over again. Sometimes I'd hear a song she used to love and feel that ache in my chest. But I didn't shove it down anymore. I let myself feel it. Then I let it pass. That's when the email came. Not from Emily. From Tyler, her husband. The subject line read, "I hope this reaches you." And the message? Well, that's when everything started to turn again. Tyler's name in my inbox hit me like a jolt of static. It had been nearly 2 months since the wedding. 2 long, sobering months of silence from Emily and the rest of her camp. And yet, here he was. I stared at the subject line for a while, half expecting it to disappear if I looked away. But it stayed. "I hope this reaches you." That alone told me everything I needed to know. Tyler was reaching out behind Emily's back. I clicked it open. "Hi, Ryan. I know this message is probably the last thing you want right now. I can only imagine how you felt after what happened at the wedding, and I just want to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I've been thinking about sending this for weeks, but honestly, I didn't know if I should. I didn't know if I was allowed. Emily has been adamant that you made your choice and that you don't want anything to do with the family anymore. But I'm starting to think maybe she's not telling the whole story. Look, this might be out of line, but I need to ask, can we talk? Just you and me. No strings, no tricks. I think there's a lot going on here that you don't know. And you deserve to. Tyler, my first instinct was suspicion. Was this a trap? Some ploy to guilt me into an apology? But the tone, it didn't feel like Emily's voice. It felt hesitant, careful, almost guilty. I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. Instead, I forwarded the email to myself, printed a copy, and tucked it into my journal. Then I slept on it. And the next morning, I brewed my strongest coffee, sat on the porch, and replied, Tyler, I'm listening. He responded within the hour, asking to meet in person. A neutral spot. His idea. We settled on a little coffee shop in a quiet part of town, the kind of place with no Wi-Fi and too many plants. He showed up 5 minutes early, already waiting when I got there. No flashy clothes, no smug grin. Just a nervous young man with dark circles under his eyes and a wedding band he kept twisting around his finger. We made awkward small talk for the first few minutes. Then I leaned forward and said, Tyler, just say whatever it is you came to say. He looked around, lowered his voice, and said the one sentence that cracked everything open. Emily never told you about the trust fund, did she? I blinked. What trust fund? Tyler exhaled like he'd just pulled the pin on a grenade. The one you set up when she was 13. The one with the clause that she couldn't touch it until she got married. Or until she turned 30. I sat back. Hard. That trust fund had slipped my mind. I'd opened it years ago, right after selling a large commercial property downtown. At the time, I'd wanted to do something special, something lasting, for Emily. Something that wasn't just groceries or college tuition. I put away $250,000 and let it sit in a high-growth portfolio. By now, with interest and market growth, it had to be worth over $500,000. And she'd never once mentioned it. Neither had Karen. You're telling me, I said slowly, that Emily knew about the fund before the wedding? He nodded. Karen told her. Apparently, Greg's friend is a financial advisor, and they found the paperwork. Emily didn't want to tell you she knew because she thought it would make her look greedy. But once she knew it would unlock after the wedding. He trailed off. I didn't need him to finish the sentence. That's why the wedding happened so fast. That's why she'd been so obsessed with making it perfect. And that's why she went through the motions of pretending to care about my involvement, just enough to make sure I didn't rock the boat. So let me guess, I said. She and Greg have plans for the money? Tyler hesitated, then nodded. They're opening a marketing firm. Greg's idea. Emily was going to be the face of it. Greg handles the operations. Karen gets a seat on the board. I was told to stay out of it. You're not on that level yet, Greg said. I thought he was joking at first. I stared at him. The weight of everything settling around me like fog. So I was a funding mechanism, I said bitterly. Nothing more. Tyler didn't deny it. That silence said enough. I wasn't supposed to say anything, he added. But after the wedding, something shifted. The way they talk about you. It's cold. Like you're an obstacle, not family. He looked up at me, eyes hardening. I wanted to marry Emily because I loved her. I still do. But I didn't sign up for this. For lies, for manipulation, for being told to pick sides. And I think you need to know what they're planning. That meeting turned into 2 hours. Tyler told me everything. Every conversation he overheard. Every strategy meeting they held behind closed doors. The way Karen and Greg framed me as emotionally unstable and financially insecure, trying to justify cutting me out of the new business plan entirely. They were already drawing up paperwork to name Greg as Emily's financial guardian for asset protection purposes. They were spinning a narrative that I was no longer trustworthy with large sums of money, that I was impulsive, vindictive. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about a ruined wedding anymore. It was a coup, and they were trying to erase me from my daughter's legacy while using the money I'd built to do it. So I thanked Tyler, told him to stay close, to play along, and to keep his ears open, because I was going to burn the entire plan to the ground. But I wasn't going to do it with emotion. That's what they were expecting. An outburst. A tantrum. Something they could point to as proof of my instability. No, I was going to do it with paperwork, precision, and patience. The first thing I did was call my attorney. I'd known Linda for over a decade. Sharp as a blade and twice as deadly in court. I walked her through everything. What Tyler had told me, what I suspected, what the original trust clause had stated. She pulled up the documents immediately. "You're still the trustee," she confirmed. "Technically, Emily has access, but you control the disbursement process." "Can I freeze it?" I asked. She paused. "Not without cause. But if there's evidence of manipulation, coercion, or bad faith." I smiled. "Good. Because we're about to get all three." Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in secret. Claire helped. So did Tyler. We gathered screenshots, voice memos, even a video clip Tyler secretly recorded of Greg bragging about how he played Ryan like a violin to fund the wedding and unlock the trust. Karen could be heard in the background saying, "It's poetic justice. He never knew how to be a real father anyway." That one hurt, but it also sealed their fate. Linda drafted a motion to place the trust under temporary protective review, citing potential fraud and undue influence. Meanwhile, I contacted the bank and initiated a pause on all disbursements, pending a financial ethics inquiry. I also set up a private forensic audit to trace any early attempts to siphon or redirect funds. And then, I made one final call. To my old college roommate, David. He's a senior editor at a well-known regional business journal. The kind of guy who loves a good scoop, especially one involving real estate moguls, shady money grabs, and betrayal among upstanding families. We met for lunch. I told him everything. He took notes, and then he smiled. "This," he said, "is going to hit like a nuke." But I wasn't done yet. While the paperwork churned through the legal system and the article quietly went into draft mode, I made one final move. I rewrote my will. I left a letter to Emily. Not angry, not cruel, just honest. And then I rerouted the trust. Still for her, but conditional now. Based on ethical behavior, regular check-ins, and, most importantly, sole access. No Karen, no Greg, no shared ventures. If she chose to walk away from them, the money was hers. Every last cent. But if she stayed in their orbit, she got nothing. Not a dime. And as Linda notarized the final page, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not rage. Not sadness. Clarity. Because now I wasn't just reacting. I was ready. The article dropped on a Monday morning. Not a word of warning. Not a whisper beforehand. Just a full front-page spread in the business section, headlined. Real estate mogul's family feud exposes bitter power struggle over $500,000 trust. I sat in my office, coffee in hand, watching the digital version spread like wildfire on social media. The journalist, my old college buddy David, had done his homework. The piece was sharp, factual, and devastatingly thorough. It outlined my background, the creation of the trust, the intent behind it, and the events leading up to the wedding. Then it pivoted, highlighting the sudden acceleration of the ceremony, the suspicious rebranding of Greg's new business, and the whispers of financial coercion. David never named Tyler directly, but there were enough anonymous quotes, sources close to the couple, to make the message clear. This wasn't just a story about a father cut out of a wedding. It was about a man being erased from his own legacy. By noon, my phone was lighting up with texts. Agents from my brokerage, colleagues, even former clients. "Is this about you? That can't be true, right? Dude, if that's real, you're a legend." But the most satisfying text came from an unlisted number, a screenshot of Greg's face, red, furious, taken from a leaked Zoom meeting. Tyler had sent it with no caption. He didn't need one. Greg was losing control. Over the next 48 hours, everything unraveled. The forensic audit I'd commissioned had finished just in time. Linda, my attorney, sent the findings straight to Emily's bank, accompanied by a formal injunction. According to the audit, Greg had already begun setting up a funnel account under the shell of Sunvale Consulting LLC, intended to receive an early loan from Emily's trust. Money he'd falsely labeled as a down payment on their future firm's operating expenses. The bank froze all related accounts immediately. Legal red flags everywhere. Emily, now legally married, was the beneficiary, but she couldn't move a cent without trustee approval. And that trustee was still me. So I picked up the phone, called her. She didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. "Emily, I saw the paperwork. I know about the fund. I know what Greg tried to do. This isn't a threat, it's a wake-up call. You still have a choice. Walk away from them, and we can talk. But if you let this continue, you'll lose more than just the money. You'll lose me. For good." No reply. For a few days, silence. Then, On a Thursday night, I received a single text. Emily, can we talk? We met at a public park. Neutral ground. I arrived early and sat on a bench near the duck pond. She showed up 10 minutes late, sunglasses on, tension radiating off her in waves. She didn't say hi. She just sat. I didn't know, she said finally. Not everything. I didn't know about the shell company, or what Greg was planning behind my back. I didn't speak. I let her keep going. I knew about the trust, she admitted. And yeah, I let Mom and Greg influence how I saw you. I let them convince me you were small, safe to ignore. I was angry at you for not fighting harder when I pulled away. I thought it meant you didn't care. I swallowed hard. Emily, I've spent my whole life fighting for you. Sometimes quietly, but always fiercely. She nodded, eyes glossy. I see that now. Another pause. They're furious, she whispered. Greg said you sabotaged everything. Mom called you a narcissist. They're pressuring me to sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. I turned to face her. Calm. Steady. Let them try. She blinked. What? I leaned forward. Greg used deception to try to access money that wasn't his. Karen supported it. You let it happen. I warned you. I gave you a choice. You picked them. She started to speak, but I held up a hand. I'm not angry anymore, Emily. I'm done feeling betrayed. But I am clear. The trust is conditional now. You'll get it. All of it. Every penny. But only if you file legal separation from Greg, remove Karen from all financial authority, and enter individual financial counseling for 6 months. That's the deal. No discussions. No second chances. Her face contorted between disbelief, guilt, and something bordering on panic. That's manipulative. No, I said. It's protective. Of my legacy. Of you. And frankly, of my sanity. Her lips trembled. I don't know if I can do that. I nodded. Then we're done here. I stood and left her sitting on the bench, shaking. Over the next few weeks, the fallout deepened. Karen tried to blast me on social media, posting a long, faux inspirational rant about toxic exes and emotional abuse masked as generosity. The comments were brutal. Too many people had read the article. Too many receipts were floating around. One of her old friends even replied, Girl, didn't he pay for her entire college and the wedding? Sit down. Greg, meanwhile, went silent. His dealerships faced sudden audits, thanks to an anonymous tip, not mine, but I had my suspicions. A few sketchy financing schemes came to light. One of his branches had its license temporarily suspended. Investors pulled out of Sunvale Consulting before it even launched. Poetic. As for Tyler, he quietly moved into one of my vacant rental units a few miles out of town. He filed for annulment a month later. Said he wanted out before the lies turned into habits. We kept in touch. He thanked me for not lumping him in with the rest. Emily didn't call again. Not for a long time. But 6 months later, I got a letter. Handwritten. Folded neatly. No return address. Dad. I filed the paperwork. I left Greg. I cut Mom off. I started therapy. I got a part-time job. I'm rebuilding. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope for it. I understand now. I really do. I'm ready to earn back the trust. Yours, and the one you built for me. If the offer still stands. I'd like to talk. Emily. I read it 3 times. Then I sat back and smiled. Not because I'd won. Because I'd stopped needing to. And because for the first time in years, I felt like I finally had peace. She could rebuild, just like I had. Or she could walk away. Either way, I wasn't waiting anymore. Because I'd already rebuilt my life on something far more solid than validation. I built it on self-respect. And this time, no one was taking it from me. They tried to bury me, but they didn't realize I was the soil, not the seed.